James knelt in the dirt. His hands were shaking, covered in mud. The cold air wrapped around him like a blanket made of sorrow. He didn't care. He couldn't feel anything anymore. Before him was a small grave, freshly dug. The earth was dark, wet, and still warm from the body he had just placed there. Max was gone. A golden retriever, loyal, brave, his only friend. 14 years they had spent together, through pain, through joy, through the silence of an empty house. Now, Max was silent forever. James pressed the final stone into place at the head of the grave. He whispered softly, "You were more than a dog, Max. You were family." The wind moved gently through the tall pine trees, but the forest was too quiet. No birds, no distant sounds, just stillness. James stood up slowly. His back ached, his chest felt empty, his eyes burned, but the tears had already fallen. There were none left. Then, the ground trembled. It was a soft shake at first, like something breathing deep beneath the soil. James stepped back. A low hiss rose from the earth. Not the wind, not an animal. A voice. It came from below. Old, cold, and full of something dark. "The earth is fed." James froze. His heart pounded. He looked around, but saw no one. The grave shifted. A crack opened in the soil. Light leaked out, soft red, and pulsing like a heartbeat. The voice came again. "Wear the crown. Be emperor. ... Or be next." James stared, not knowing what to do. His hands clenched into fists. The soil collapsed inward, revealing something beneath the grave. The collar was gone. Where Max had been buried, there now lay a metal crown, black and silver, sharp and ancient. It looked as though it had been there for centuries, waiting for him. James stepped forward, breath shallow. His voice was a whisper. "What is this?" The crown pulsed. It shimmered, calling to him. The air around it felt heavy, charged with energy. He looked around the woods. Still, nothing. No sign of anyone. No movement, only silence. And that glowing crown. He reached out as his fingers touched the edge. A flash of pain shot through his palm. He screamed and pulled back. A mark burned into his skin, deep and glowing red. He fell to his knees, gripping his hand. The pain was like fire, but it faded quickly, replaced by something else. A warmth, a pull. Images raced through his mind. Stars, ruins, cities not built by human hands, thrones made of bone. Armies that knelt, voices whispering, "He is chosen. He is the last. The crown belongs to him now." James gasped and dropped his head. He was no king. He was just a man who lost his dog. A man who lived alone in a cabin, far from the world. But now, the world was coming to him. The crown lay still in the dirt, but it wasn't quiet. He could feel it now, beating, breathing, alive. The mark on his hand glowed brighter. He looked down at it, then at the grave. Max was gone. But something else had awakened. The voice whispered once more, softer now. "Be emperor. ... Or be next." James stood slowly. The forest remained quiet, but everything had changed, and deep inside, he knew this was only the beginning. James touched the crown again. This time, he did not pull back, and the mark on his skin began to burn. James woke with a gasp. He was no longer in the forest, no longer near the grave, no longer on Earth. He stood in a vast field of stars, infinite, endless. Bright lights floated all around him, pulsing like hearts. He wasn't breathing, but he was alive. The air tasted like metal and memory. He turned slowly. Everywhere he looked, there was nothing but stars and sky. Beneath his feet, no ground. Yet he didn't fall. Then came the voice again. "You touched the crown. The crown touched you. The bond is made." James held up his hand. The mark was still there, glowing red and alive. Suddenly, the stars shifted. They formed shapes, Images. He saw cities rise and fall, towers higher than mountains, creatures with silver skin, ships larger than clouds. And then, fire. Everything burned, empires fell, screams echoed, and in the center of it all, a throne made of stone, wrapped in black roots. A figure sat upon it, alone, crowned, silent. The voice whispered. The last emperor chose silence. He chose death. Now the crown chooses you. James tried to speak, but no words came. Then, from the edge of the stars, someone walked toward him. A woman. Tall. Calm. Her skin was pale like snow under moonlight. Her hair shimmered like starlight. But it was her eyes that held him still, silver and ancient, like she had seen everything and felt it all. She stopped a few steps away. You shouldn't be here yet, she said softly. James blinked. Where is here? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she stepped closer. She looked at his marked hand. It's begun. Then, she whispered. Who are you? He asked. She looked into his eyes for a long time, then said, I was once like you, chosen, but I walked away. He didn't understand. You touched the crown. I wore it, she said. I ruled. I bled. I watched the stars burn. I was called Empress. Now I am nothing. James stepped back. Why me? I didn't ask for this. I just wanted to bury my dog. Her voice softened. The crown does not wait for permission. It waits for grief. Pain opens the gate, and you opened it wide. He looked down. So it was real, all of it. The mark, the crown, the voice, and now, her. I'm not a king, James said. I live in a cabin. I grow tomatoes. I fix broken things. That's all I am. She looked at him, something like sadness in her eyes. That's why it chose you. Empires need rulers who remember what it means to be human. A pause. Then she added, but beware. The crown feeds on more than power. It feeds on love. If you wear it, nothing you love will be safe. James felt his chest tighten. Max. His home. The life he knew. If I say no. She looked at the stars. Then Earth becomes like the others. Burned, buried, forgotten. The images returned. Cities turning to ash. Skies turning red. He clenched his fists. The mark burned brighter. Why are you helping me? He asked. She didn't answer at first. Then she said, because, I see him in you. James frowned. See who? But she turned away. The stars began to fade. Her figure shimmered. You're waking up, she said. Wait, he called. What's your name? She smiled, gently, sadly. Then, everything went dark. James woke on his couch. The fireplace was cold. The windows were frosted. But the room was quiet, too quiet. He sat up fast. His hand still bore the glowing mark. On the table in front of him, the crown rested calm, silent, but waiting. He stared at it, breathing heavily. He touched it once more. No pain this time, just warmth. His head filled with voices, ancient, distant, full of sorrow. And then one voice broke through, soft, clear. Ali Ra. Double quotes. The choice is coming. James, the crown calls, but so do I. James stood in his cabin, holding the crown in his hands. He looked out the window, and for a second, he swore he saw silver eyes watching him from the woods. James had not slept all night. He sat in the cabin, watching the crown. It didn't move. It didn't glow. But he knew it was watching him. Every time he blinked, flashes of stars lit behind his eyes. Cities' screams. Alira's voice. Her warning. The crown feeds on love. James got up and stepped outside. The forest was cold and quiet. Frost covered the ground. His breath came out in white clouds. But something felt wrong. The air was heavy, too still. As he stepped past Max's grave, the soil cracked. The same red light rose from beneath. But this time, it was not a whisper. It was a pull. His feet moved without thinking. Step by step, the ground opened under him. A hole, wide and deep, swallowed him whole. He didn't scream. He fell. When James hit the bottom, it was not with pain, but silence. He stood in a vast underground chamber. The walls were smooth stone, covered in strange glowing symbols. The air smelled like old fire and ash. Before him stood a gate, carved from bones, covered in roots that pulsed like veins. And beyond the gate, something moved. A voice echoed through the chamber. Not Alira's, not the crown's stone, deeper, older. To lead, you must first survive. Flesh must face flesh. Stone must know blood. The gate creaked open. James took a step forward. The floor shook. From the shadows, it came. A creature, 10 feet tall. Its body was made of armor and muscle, stone and steel. Its eyes glowed red, and its mouth split open with rows of sharp, black teeth. James froze. He had no weapon, no plan, no time. The creature roared. It charged. James rolled to the side, barely avoiding its claws. He grabbed a broken bone from the ground and swung. The bone snapped. The creature didn't stop. James ran. Behind a pillar. The monster smashed through it like paper. He coughed, breathing in dust. He had no strength, no power. But then the mark on his hand began to burn. A voice whispered in his mind, "Remember who you are." James closed his eyes. Max's face, the quiet cabin, Alira's silver eyes. He opened his hand. The red light pulsed. The creature roared again and charged. This time, James stood his ground. He didn't move. The monster raised its claw and struck, but the mark exploded with light. A wall of red energy burst from James's body, throwing the beast across the chamber. It hit the wall and crumbled. Stone cracked. Dust fell. Silence returned. James fell to his knees, breathing hard. He looked at his hand. The mark had changed. It was no longer just a symbol. It now looked like a crown. Then, the voice returned. One test passed. To remain. James looked up. The chamber shifted. The walls fell away. He was standing in a wide canyon. A second creature stepped forward, but this one was not made of stone. It looked human. A man, tall and broad, with kind eyes. His voice was gentle. "Do you remember me, James?" James frowned. "No." The man smiled. "I was your father's friend. I watched you grow. I buried your mother when no one else came." James stepped back. This wasn't real. It couldn't be. The man kept walking. "You left everything behind, but now you want to lead an empire. What makes you worthy?" James shouted. "Get out of my head." The man stopped. His skin melted away. Beneath it was fire, eyes of coal, mouth of flame. The creature screamed and lunged. James dodged. His mind felt heavy. The room spun. He was fighting not with his body now, but with memory. The fire creature laughed. "You bury your pain, James, but pain is the crown's price." James dropped to the ground, clutching his chest. The fire closed in. Then her voice came. "Alira, clear.com. James, remember who you are. You are not alone." His mark lit up again. A blast of red fire shot from his palm, striking the creature. It vanished into ash. The canyon faded. He was alone again. In darkness then, slowly, light returned. He stood in a quiet room, stone walls, a pool of still water in the center, and there she stood, Alira, real solid. She stepped forward. "You survived," she said. James nodded, barely able to speak. "You saw fire. You saw fear, but you also saw me." He looked into her eyes. "Why did you help me?" Her voice was soft. "Because you remind me of him. The one I failed. The one I loved." James stepped closer. "What happened to him?" Her eyes filled with pain. "The crown took him. I couldn't stop it. I was too late." James reached out. He held her hand. You're not too late now. She looked at their hands, and for a moment, something passed between them. Hope, but it didn't last. The walls began to shake. The water turned black, and the voice returned. 2 tests passed. 1 remains. Choose the crown, or lose everything. James. And Alira turned toward the dark tunnel ahead. The final test was waiting, and this time, it would not be fair. The tunnel ahead was silent. James and Alira walked slowly, side by side. The walls shimmered with strange light. Faint voices echoed, though no one was there. James held his marked hand close to his chest. The crown's power was inside him now. He could feel it, like a second heartbeat. But his eyes stayed on Alira. She moved with grace, but her shoulders were tense. Her eyes, once calm, now held something else. Fear. He stopped walking. Alira, he said quietly. What aren't you telling me? She didn't turn. Her voice was low. There are things you must see, not things I can explain. He frowned. Then show me. She turned toward him, slowly. Her silver eyes were bright, almost glowing. Are you sure? She asked. James nodded. I trust you. Her hand touched his forehead. Everything went white. He was no longer in the tunnel. He stood in a great palace. Golden pillars stretched to the sky. Giant windows showed stars outside. Alien stars. But the throne room was in ruins. Blood stained the marble. Bodies of armored soldiers lay broken on the floor. And in the center stood Alira, but not the Alira he knew. This one wore armor, a shining crown. Her face was hard. Her eyes were cold. She looked younger, but her soul looked older. Crowds bowed before her. She lifted her hand, and a city burned in the distance. The voice from behind whispered, she was once empress of 1,000 worlds. She ruled with fire. She ruled with silence. And she failed them all. James turned. The vision shifted. He now saw a man standing beside her, tall, strong, human. He looked like James, not the same face, but the same soul, the same pain in the eyes. He and Alira stood hand in hand, but the crown on her head began to glow. It shook, screamed, it tore them apart. He tried to run to her, but the vision froze. Then shattered. James was back in the tunnel, gasping. Alira stood before him, tears in her eyes. You saw it, she whispered. He nodded. His voice barely came out. You loved him. She nodded slowly. His name was Rallan. He was chosen by the last crown, just like you. James stepped forward. What happened to him? Alira's voice cracked. He tried to fight it. But the crown was too strong. It fed on his love, on mine. It made him forget me. And when I tried to save him, I failed. She looked away. I killed him. James froze. Her hands shook. I didn't mean to. The crown turned him into something else. Something hollow. It made him attack the people. I had no choice. James didn't speak. The silence was heavy. Alira looked up. That's why I warned you. The crown doesn't want a king. It wants a servant, a puppet. It hides behind honor and destiny. But in the end, it devours what you love most. She stepped back. If you keep going, James, it will take me from you, just like it did before. He looked at her then, at his hand. The mark was glowing brighter, then back at her face. I don't want power, he said. I never did. I just wanted to live a quiet life, with Max, with peace. He paused. But now I've seen what's coming, and I can't walk away. He stepped closer, but I'm not like him. I won't let the crown turn me. Not if I know what it's trying to do. Not if you're with me. Alira's breath caught. You'd fight it. For me. James nodded. I'd burn every empire before I let it take you. She smiled, but it was full of sadness. I don't deserve that. He took her hand. We don't choose who we deserve. We choose who we protect. She looked down, trembling. James, I'm afraid. He pulled her into his arms. So am I, but that doesn't mean we stop. The walls around them rumbled. The tunnel cracked. The voice returned. Love is weakness. Only pain remains. The floor split open. A path of fire appeared. Alira stepped back, her eyes wide. James stood still. He looked at the fire, then at her. I will not become what the crown wants. He turned toward the flame. I'll become what the crown fears. He stepped forward. The fire did not burn him. The mark on his hand glowed red, then gold, and the path ahead opened. Behind him, Alira whispered, if he survives this, then maybe there's hope after all. The flames did not burn James. They moved around him, twisting like wind, silent. Watching each step forward felt heavier. His feet dragged, not because of pain, but because something deep inside him was resisting. Something was whispering soft, deep, familiar. He paused. The world around him shifted. The fire faded. Now he stood in a black void. No ground, no sky, just endless dark. Then, from the silence, it came, the voice. But this time, it wasn't cold. It wasn't distant. It was his voice. James. He turned. Nothing was there. James, you know me. His heart pounded. I was there when Max died. I was there when you cried yourself to sleep, alone. I was born the day you lost everything. James clenched his fists. Who are you? He shouted. The dark pulsed. I am grief. I am the part of you that never healed. I am the echo of every goodbye. From the darkness, a shape began to form. It looked like James, but twisted, eyes hollow, skin cracked with glowing red veins, a crown of black thorns on its head. It smiled. You didn't come here for power, James. You came here to end your pain. You buried a dog? But what you really buried, was hope. James stepped back. No, he said. That's not true. The creature stepped forward. You never wanted to be saved. You wanted to be ended. The shadows behind it began to move. Visions, his past, his father's grave, the empty house, Max, whimpering in pain, James falling to his knees, screaming. The voice leaned closer. All you had to do was let go, wear the crown, rule the dead, forget the living. James trembled. He was slipping. Then a light broke through, soft silver. Alira's voice filled the void. James, don't listen. It's lying. The creature hissed. She left you once. She'll leave you again. Just like the others. James gritted his teeth. His hand lit up. The mark on his palm pulsed with gold now. Not red. He stared at the creature. I know what you are, James said. You're not grief. You're the cage built from it. The voice screamed. The crown on its head cracked. James stepped forward. You don't feed on power. You feed on pain, on fear, on loneliness. I'm done feeding you. He raised his hand. The gold light exploded. The creature shattered into dust. The void collapsed. James fell to his knees. He was back in the chamber of fire, breathing hard. Alira rushed to him, eyes wide. You did it. He looked up at her. I saw it. The voice. The truth. It's not just some ancient power. It's alive. She helped him stand. What did it say? He looked at her carefully. It said, you'd leave me. That you already had. Alira looked away. I did once, but I never forgot you, or what we had, and I won't leave this time. James touched her face. I know, and I believe you. Their hands joined, and for a moment, the fire around them quieted, but not for long. The ceiling. Cracked stone began to fall. The crown appeared in the air, floating, waiting, not silent anymore. It spoke clearly now. You passed the final test. The crown is yours. James looked at it. Its light was soft now, not evil, but still dangerous. He reached out. Alira grabbed his wrist. James, wait. He looked at her. If you take it, there's no going back. I know. Then why? He looked into her eyes. Because someone has to stop it from ever choosing again. He touched the crown. The mark on his hand burned. Bright. The chamber shook. The walls exploded into light. James stood in the stars once more, but this time, he was alone. No voice, no vision, only silence. He looked at his hand. The crown had melted into his skin. A part of him now. He closed his eyes. I don't want to be a god, he whispered. I just want to protect what I love. He opened his eyes. Back in the cabin, fireplace lit, Alira standing by the window. She turned. He was pale, weaker, but smiling. You came back, she said. James nodded. I promised I would. She ran into his arms, and this time, the crown didn't burn him. It listened, but outside the cabin, in the woods, something watched. The last servant of the voice, still waiting, still hungry. James stood on the porch of the cabin. The sky above him wasn't the same. It had changed. The stars moved like they were alive. The moon had turned red, and the wind carried whispers he couldn't ignore. Behind him, Alira watched silently, her arms crossed, her face pale. You feel it too, she said. James nodded. The voice isn't done. He looked at his hand. The crown mark glowed gold, but the warmth had faded. Now, it felt heavy, like it carried the weight of a dying galaxy. They know I've taken the crown, James whispered. Alira stepped forward. And now, they're coming. James didn't ask who. He already knew. The crown had not only chosen him, it had awakened. What came before? The last pieces of a forgotten empire, and they wanted their king that night. The stars fell, not like shooting stars, like ships, thousands of them, silent, cold, massive. They hovered over the forest, like shadows stretching across. Time. James stood in the clearing, alone. The cabin behind him, earth around him. He could hear the voices again, not from within, but from above. Come with us, Emperor. Lead us, or earth will fall with you. A circle of light appeared before him, a portal opening slowly. Inside it, a throne floated in darkness, waiting. James clenched his fists. Alira walked beside him. You don't have to go, she said. I do, he replied. She stepped closer. Her voice cracked. Why does it have to be you? James looked at her. Because no one else will stop them. And if I don't, they'll keep choosing. Over and over. More voices, more crowns, more graves. He paused. This ends with me. Tears filled Alira's eyes. You told me you wouldn't leave. I'm not, he said. He reached into his coat and pulled out something wrapped in cloth. Max's old collar. He placed it gently in her hands. You're my home, and Max was the last part of who I used to be. If I have to lead, I'll carry both of you with me. She held the collar tightly. I lost you once, she whispered. He smiled, softly. Not this time. He kissed her, one last time, then stepped into the light. Inside the portal, silence returned. James stood before the throne. It rose from dark stone, floating in nothing around him. Alien beings appeared, pale skin, eyes glowing, armor from worlds no longer alive. They bowed, one stepped forward. You are the last of the line. The crown is now whole. Speak your command, Emperor. James looked at them, then looked down at his own hands. The mark was burning, but this time, it didn't hurt. I am not your king, he said. They looked confused. I am your end. He raised his hand. The gold light exploded outward. The beings screamed. The walls cracked. The throne began to crumble. One voice cried out, You would destroy what is yours. James shouted back, It was never mine. It belonged to fear, to death, to silence. He turned to the throne. And I choose to break the cycle. The chamber shook. The portal above Earth flickered. Alira ran outside. The ships in the sky began to fall apart. One by one, she fell to her knees, watching as the stars died. The sky turned bright gold, then dashed silence, complete. James stood alone. Everything was gone. No voices. No throne. Just light. And then he heard it. A soft bark. He turned. Max was there. Not as flesh, not as ghost, but as something eternal. James smiled. "Hey, buddy." Max wagged his tail and walked toward the light. James followed. He didn't know where they were going, only that it was peaceful. That for once, the crown wasn't whispering, and in that moment, he felt free. Earth 1 week later. Alira sat on the porch of the cabin. She stared at the stars. The red moon was gone. The forest had returned to silence, and in her hands, Max's collar no longer felt cold. It pulsed, just slightly. She closed her eyes. "Thank you, James." Then, from the trees, she heard it, a soft bark. She looked up and smiled, but far beyond Earth, in the space between galaxies, a small piece of the crown still floated in the dark, and something was watching. Something waiting. The forest was alive again. The trees stood tall. The birds had returned. The breeze felt warm, like it carried something sacred. Alira sat on the porch. She hadn't spoken in days, not because she was afraid, but because she was listening. Every morning, she waited in the same spot, watching the woods, holding Max's old collar in her lap. It still pulsed with a faint gold glow. Sometimes, at night, she thought she heard footsteps, thought she saw a shadow just beyond the trees. But every time she called out, there was only silence. Until now, that morning, just as the sun rose behind the hills, the forest shifted. Not loudly, softly, like it had exhaled. And then, the door opened. She turned. Her breath caught. James stood in the doorway. His eyes were tired, but kind. His skin was pale, but warm, and the mark on his hand had faded to silver. He looked at her. "You waited." Alira stood up, slowly. She didn't speak. She just walked forward and placed her hand on his chest. "You're real," she whispered. He nodded, only just. Her eyes welled up with tears. "I saw the sky turn gold. I saw everything vanish." I thought. He gently held her face. "I was gone, but not lost." He looked past her, at the forest. The crown is gone. The voice is gone. The empire, forgotten. He stepped down onto the grass. "I burned it all. I let go." Alira leaned into him. "What brought you back?" He smiled. "You." Later that evening, they sat by the fire. James held Max's collar in his hands. "He was waiting for me," James said. "Right at the edge of the light." Alira smiled. "Of course he was. You saved the world. Twice." James looked over at her. "I didn't save it for the world. I saved it for you." She reached over and took his hand. "You gave everything, and still came home." He paused. Double quotes. "No. I left something behind." He stood and walked outside. Alira followed. The stars were bright. Above them, James raised his marked hand. The silver glow sparked one final time, and from the forest, a shape appeared. It was Max. Not the same, not flesh and fur, but light and spirit. His tail wagged as he ran into James's arms. James knelt and laughed. Alira joined him. Her hands trembled. He came back. James nodded. "Because I finally did." The next day they planted a tree over Max's grave. James placed a collar beneath the roots. He whispered, "Rest now, boy. You've earned it." Alira stood beside him. "You both have." As weeks passed, life returned to normal. James built a greenhouse beside the cabin. Alira spent her mornings in the woods, drawing symbols she remembered from the stars. They never spoke of the empire again. But sometimes, at night, when the wind was still, the stars would flicker in rhythm, not as a warning, but as a thank you. 1 year later, a child ran through the grass behind the cabin. Laughing Max ran beside her, still made of light, still loyal. James and Alira sat on the porch, watching. She has your eyes, Alira said. James chuckled. And your spirit. They sat in silence for a while. Then James spoke. I never thought I'd see this. A family. Peace. Alira looked over at him. You earned it. You faced the worst thing in the universe, and walked back. James took her hand. No, I didn't walk back. You pulled me home. The sun dipped low, behind the trees. The stars began to wake. James leaned back in his chair, looking at the sky. The mark on his hand no longer glowed, but the scar remained, a quiet reminder of what he once carried, and what he chose to protect. Far above Earth, beyond the reach of light, a faint shimmer passed through the black. The last shard of the crown drifted into nothing, and for now, humanity was free.